Chad, welcome to the Production Online podcast. For those that don't know, tell us a little bit about what you do.
I am Chad Vegas, and I am formerly of Bethel Church, Bethel Music. I was a broadcast director there for about 5.5 years, and then moved over to Transformation Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with Pastor Mike Todd, where I was the broadcast director there and film director. And most recently, through the past, has it been 6 months? I think about 6 months. I left Transformation Church to go freelance and got this random call from Sony to help head up Sony's Faith division. So now I am the national accounts manager for Sony and the Sony Faith division. So I hit up Sony's Faith division.
Nice. So, what exactly do you do at Sony Faith? What are your objectives?
So my whole goal, and I said this in the interviews, and it was funny because as I'm saying it, I'm like, for me, it was like, Lord, if you really want me to be in this position with Sony, then I know you'd make it happen. But I'm not a sales guy. And so I told them that. I said, if you want a sales guy, I'm not it. If you want somebody that can help bring value to churches by helping create, I guess not create, but foster healthy church teams, production teams, then that's my heart. That's what I want to go after. And a lot of times, it can come down to gear, and gear can really help the production team or hurt the production team. Sometimes if we get too much gear right away and you don't have enough staff, it can totally just like, whoa, overwhelm your staff, and then it can create an unhealthy production team. Or if you go the opposite route and you have amazing gear that's easy to use, that's, very robust in how the workflow can be for your teams, then a lot of times it can help foster that creativity, foster a healthy production team. So, talking through all that with them, and ended up getting the job. And basically, my day to day is really being able to go out there, help train teams, help church production teams become the healthiest that they can be, as well as talk about how much I love Sony. So it turned out to be a perfect fit.
So, tell me, what sets apart Sony from the rest?
For me, it's the company as a whole is an amazing company. Uh, they're value-based company. And on top of that, as far as camera and gear-wise go, it's the longevity, the reliability of it, the ease of use, technically ease of use. There's still some stuff that I wish our menu system was a little bit easier to navigate, right? But the longevity of it, I had a guy show me at SALT conference a couple months ago this, video of his, I think it was his service or it was an interview, and I was like, "Oh, this is great." And I actually thought it was shot on some of our newer cameras. He's like, "Oh, I've had these cameras for like 20 years. These are old Sony cameras that I've had for 20 years." And he said it's still, still performing well today. Same goes for like some of our cinema line stuff, like the Sony Venice. There's times when I've been on the other end of the camera, and I've been out in the hot sun, the hot heat for days, and not once did it overheat. Going back to the transformation days, all of our cameras, I can't really remember one of them actually being sent in for an RMA because something happened to it. So there's the longevity, the reliability of our camera system, and then one of the things that I really love is that every one of our camera bodies, no matter if you go from your A line to the cinema line to the studio line that we have, we actually pride ourselves that we can actually match color for any of our camera bodies, even down to our PTZ cameras. So regardless of what camera you have, you could mix and match a bunch of Sony cameras, and you could actually have it look like it was all shot on the same exact camera. So yeah, that's a couple of things that I really love about it.
Now, from what I see, there are three main categories of cameras that we typically use in church. There are PTZ cameras, there are big broadcast cameras, and then there are cinema cameras. But from what it looks like, you guys are kind of using a mishmash of all of them for a big production. Is that the case?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, a lot of times you'll see mix of your heavy cinema line down to your lower end cinema line, like the FX3, right? And your heavy cinema lines, your Burano, your Venice, and then they're mixing those together for a live broadcast, or even down to like a PTZ camera to the other our new FR7 PTZ camera, which is a full frame. You can put your own lens on the front of it. Essentially it's an FX6 body with a PTZ head. And so you can mix that with, a camcorder and, a lot of times now I think we're at a spot, and it's been happening a lot with certain churches, we'll mix and match because camera is based on affordability, right? If this camera right now we got this camera, and then right now we can afford this Blackmagic camera. Okay, let's bring this Blackmagic camera in, so at least we get 2 cameras now, right? And then, later on down the road, there's another, situation where, hey, we can get a Sony A7 IV. Okay, let's get a Sony A7 V, and then you try to mix that and match that. There's ways of actually being able to utilize multiple different types of cameras and have it in your broadcast and have it seamless. It does make it a lot easier if you have a, a ecosystem that's exactly the same. So Blackmagic works with Blackmagic very well, right? Works with Sony very well. We want to have excellence. We want to bring the best that we can bring for the people at home watching at home, for the people that can't make it to church, for the people that are even looking at our church like, hey, is this a place that I can attend? And so kind of going back to doing your due diligence is making sure that one, again, right, it helps you be uh, a healthier production team because you're not having to do a bunch of stuff to kind of make it work. And then two, making sure that the quality that you get out of it and the longevity of it is something that, it's an investment for sure. But once you get into that and you invest and you know that, hey, this is going to last, at least 10 years, uh, exporting that type of excellence is something that I think it's still kind of in that infancy stage, where we're wanting to see things really great. We're wanting to see things that look great coming out of a church. And at the same time, we're trying to do it on a shoestring budget and also working with gear that is either failing or old, right?
Yeah, as you said, it's really difficult to get out of an ecosystem once you're already bought into that ecosystem. And I think that's kind of by design. But for churches, would you advise them to go through an integrator to make this kind of purchase?
Yeah, if you are somebody that's not necessarily a video guy, haven't been in it for a while, definitely reach out to an integrator. They usually have, just tons of knowledge, right? They do this all day long, so they have tons of knowledge of how a system could work with your room. Say you're like, hey, I know, Sony does great cameras. What kind of cameras can we get for this size of building, or things like that? They can actually help spec out everything down to well, how far off is your stage from your camera, all that stuff. And so they know how to basically answer, not just answer the questions, but also ask the right questions to you, right? And so integrators for me are very key and pivotal nowadays because you can search online all you want, and you can even talk to other video directors, but at the end of the day, if you still aren't that comfortable with, man, I don't know really what lens do I put on here, or how do we actually sync all of this together, run this to the control room? An integrator is actually it's very valuable.
Now, I wanted to take some time to watch some video clips that you directed in the past and just get your thoughts on it. This one in particular, you posted it. Whenever you did it, really went viral because it was so fresh and brand new. And let's just watch it. That was so cool.
Yeah.
I kind of got to ask though, is it usually that distorted?
No, no. So this one, it was funny because when we were doing the actual like walkthrough of, where I was going to direct from, where the 5 pack was going to be. Originally, the amps were supposed to be for the guitars were supposed to be on the other side of the stage, and because of just how things were being routed and things, they had to put the amps on our side of the stage. So I pretty much lost my voice that whole conference. Yeah, not usually that distorted for sure, but and also that was a time too, we were all just trying to figure out, okay, how do we get comms into a system? How do we, get my comms, get, other, operators in there, and so it was a whole hodgepodge of like, okay, let's try this board and let's just plug this in and try this stuff. So, yeah, yeah.
So how long had you been doing cinema broadcasts like this up to this point?
That I would say would have been by then. It would have been probably a year.
And were you guys still trying to figure it all out, work out the kinks?
A little bit, yeah. We were still trying to, we. I would say that was our that whole. As soon as we started, we never stopped experimenting. And so we would always try stuff. Hey, like that was honestly one of the first times that we kind of I had I think it was Toby who was on camera on that cam. And I said, "Hey, on this point, can you just whip out to the stage and to a reverse of, the worship leaders and just run towards it, just go towards it. And I'll hold on you for a little bit, It ended up working out, but at the same time, it was that big experiment. Okay, what if we tried this? Okay, oh, that didn't work out quite well. Okay, what about this? Oh yeah, that's amazing. So yeah, it was still in our experimental phase, and we were still trying to get to a spot. I think where we were uh not comfortable, but just like, okay, this is good. Like we can settle here, and we can kind of start striding now, just relaxing a little bit and not to try to like, hey, let's try and, do too much, because it's easy to get to that spot where, oh, let's try this, and let's try that, And so trying to get to that spot was this was probably towards the tail end of it for sure.
So what was the feedback like from leadership when you guys started doing this?
It was pretty good, yeah. By this time, especially, and it's one of those things that they wanted for this conference and this type of uh, this venue. I think a lot of it when we first started for sure was back and forth of, hey, how does this look? Oh, it's too shaky. Okay, let's come back a little bit. Is this too much movement? Oh yeah, that's a little bit too much, And then we get to a really good middle ground, and we stay there for a while, and then I start to push it again. Hey, let's start a little bit more movement, or let's put fishing lens in front of the lens, our fishing line in front of the lens, and try to create some flares, try to create some of that, anamorphic. So, let's try to get that anamorphic look by throwing some fishing line over the lens so that way we can get some flare that when the light hits it, just trying a bunch of different things, pushing it a little bit, and then, okay, we gotta come back a little bit, and then push again, then come back, and then finally you land in this really cool sweet spot where, both leadership, worship leaders and your production team are just really happy and actually kinda transitioning to that point as far as production teams go, where you're actually, "Okay, we can actually worship, fully worship and enter in," so.
1155 3 3 4 1 1 7 7 6 8. That was epic. 3 3.
Jaden, that move from the guitar to the
Dear
drums
Lord.
at that moment was one long, epic slow motion
Dear
that we
Lord.
didn't take, but it was epic.
Oh my gosh. 7.
Wasn't that cool?
I remember this broadcast so vividly. As soon as I saw it, I was thinking to myself, how do I do that? How do I make that happen? Why do you think that is? Why do you think this is such an attractive way to do broadcasts?
Yeah, I think, a lot of it was something that was different, and that was the goal all along. Well, there was 2 aspects to it, right? The first goal is I wanted it to feel different. I wanted it to look different because traditional broadcast for me was a way of covering the room and what's happening. Cinematic broadcast is really a way of bringing people and inviting them into the experience with us. And so it was one of those things where I think it took off because people were seeing that like, "Oh, yeah, we can kinda do this." First of all, like, we can kinda mimic what we see in film and transition that into broadcast, and, by far, I don't think that we were the only ones that were actually doing it, but we were one of the forerunners in it just because of our reach and who were at Bethel, I really feel like it took off because you could actually we got to a spot where it's like, "Man, yeah, I can actually feel like I'm a part of that service," Even watching it back now, I get the feels too just from, like, taken back to that time and being there and being able to be a part of that moment and experience that and to still feel as I'm watching it back now, it's something like, okay, Lord, and then obviously my whole thing, is I wanted them to get to a spot with the production team where they could actually worship through their craft. And so for us, instead of traditionally just covering, just showing up to, okay, I'm going to be on camera and I'm going to capture this. I was like, no, I'm going to be on camera and I'm going to worship through my craft. I'm going to actually partner with the Lord and say, hey, Lord, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to capture this? How do you want me to frame this person up? Like a lot of times, we can forget that, especially in church production, where it's like, Lord, how do you want us to do this? And actually asking him that, because it's easy to come in and just do your job and be like, oh yeah, I've done this, 1,000 times. But actually partnering with the Lord and saying, Lord, how do you want me to show up today? How can I best help spread your love and your message through the screen by actually inviting you to help me?
What do you tell the cam op team to prepare them for this type of broadcast, to build that chemistry where it's worship first and capture second?
Yeah, it's a lot of communication, a lot of time spent together. A lot of times with, whether it's praying and worshiping together, a lot of times hanging out together and just having, community nights where you're just playing games and doing fun stuff. Uh, they gotta function as a team, an actual team. They have to either, and I shouldn't say team because that my whole thing is I never wanted to create a great video production team. I wanted to create a family so that everybody trusted each other and knew each other and, trusted me and knew me and knew that if they were to make a mistake, that I was gonna come down on them hard and or be like, "What's wrong with you?" It was just like, "Hey, okay, cool. Live environment, mistakes happen. Let's move on." If the mistake happens over and over, then we have a talk. But other than that, it's like it's one of those things where you gotta get your team to trust you. And uh for me, how I did that was worship, prayer, community nights, hanging out, just getting to know them more. Essentially, to be quite honest, essentially it's pastoring, right? I'm pastoring.
Now, I want to touch on something, and I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are on this. Is the center camera an underappreciated camera position?
Yeah, I could say for sure. Yeah. A lot of times, especially for, when we were back at Bethel, I actually underappreciated it. There was some cool shots, but I was like, okay, that's just a main shot. Whereas, when I went over to Transformation Church, I really wanted to implement like, okay, how do I get that main camera as part of this whole thing? Because it's technically, if you really down to the bare bottom bones of it, it's your main center follow cam. It's technically like a lock off cam, right? You're following someone, but you're pretty much on that person the entire time, right? So how can you make that, better? How can you kind of involve even the camera op? How can you have them think through like, hey, what if you shot it like this? What if you rack focus from here to there? The beauties about our lens over at Transformation that we had was that when we threw on the extender, it kind of looked like a video transition, like an effect. And so there were times when they would actually like at certain parts, they'd have it extended full in, so they'd be super tight, and then on time they'd hit the extender to turn it off, and then it'll come out to a wide shot, but it looks like this transitional effect. And so adding that into, I think center cameras are definitely underappreciated for sure. Yeah.
For anyone that was fortunate enough to be in the room, this night was special. It was not being broadcast. This video is kind of the only video that got posted after from that night. And I really want you to just kind of break down what happened behind the scenes to go into that. Like, what was going on? What made this unique?
No, yeah, I think so just a backstory for a lot of people that don't know the story behind the worship night was it was going to be, it was a no broadcast, and we were actually going to originally just have like a locked off camera just to have have some archival footage of it. And they asked at the last minute, hey, would you guys be willing to come in? And it was great because the entire team was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And I think it was a lot easier for us to really fully, I think it was, for me, I would say this, it was probably one of the first times where I could even as a director fully like enter into just worshiping because they're like, oh, it's not going to be, it's just a live cut. It's not we're not live online, right? We're just for archival purposes, right? So, not fully worry if there's a mistake, all that stuff, right? And so it was easier, I think, for the team in and of itself to just be like, you know, relaxed and being able to this, let's just try stuff. And a lot of this too, like what we were doing was definitely even more on that experimental side. Like, hey, let's do a little bit more movement here, or let's get a you know, long shot of, actually no, that wasn't a long shot of Callie. It was basically one of our cam ups on stage, and I just stuck to them for a while, and they were skilled enough, and after again practice, right, and to be able to get a shot at that MCU shot of her and be able to follow, that's all on handheld, so it's phenomenal stuff. But I think at the end of the day it was really cool to kind of just have that moment for the team, and to know like that eventually they released some of it. It's really cool. And so, but it was a powerful night for the team. There's like multiple times when, we're all in tears, just like, man, Lord, your goodness is so good. And how can, how in all of our histories, for every place that we came from to be here in this moment at this time was something that was just like completely unheard of in our, in our minds. But yet the Lord brought us all together for that moment.
That night was a lot of fun, and it was special because the cam ops were just crushing it. They were just giving 100%, knowing full well that it wasn't going to be seen by anybody. And there was no pressure to stay. There was no pressure to give it their all, yet they still did. And that's awesome. Whenever you see people just doing it for the sake of the passion and for the love of the ministry, it hits different.
No, I think that's, and you hit on something too. It's like optional, right? It's like I chose to be here. Like I chose this. And because of that, I really feel, and even on going down to when there's times when you're actually live streaming, right? And you're going out into an audience or you're doing a recording that's going to be seen by people. It's that mindset like, Lord, I'm choosing to be here and I need you to show up and use me, especially there's times when we're fighting our own battles. We're trying to do things or we're trying to, I would always talk to my volunteers like, thank you for your yes, because your yes, is helping somebody out there in the world. Not right now. They're going to be able to get healing. They're going to be able to get help because you showed up, even though if your car broke down on your way in, you still came in, right? Or, if you're having an argument with your wife and you come in and you still show up and say yes. So it's like choosing that. The Lord definitely moves and uses that and say like, okay, you chose to be here. Let's do this, So let's run together. Let's partner. And so, yeah.